Dr. Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist and a professor at the University of Ottawa, and he is about to set me straight. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you.
So the guys in hazmat suits wanding stuff down, does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't hurt. That's the first thing. And is it our biggest bang for a buck? Clearly not. It's not the biggest bang for a buck. So there are different ways that viruses travel and infect people. Number one is through direct physical contact, sometimes through sexual contact and things like that. Number two, sometimes through vectors, like mosquitoes. So malaria spreads that way. Number three, there's the fecal-oral route, which is exactly what it sounds like. Not to get into details.
Goodness gracious, it's lunchtime, Doc.
I know. Then there's droplet transmission, which is how we think COVID mostly is transmitted. So bits of fluid are coughed up from your lungs or exhaled, and they land within 2 meters of your body, and if it lands on someone's face and gets into their eyes or their nose, that's how they get infected, which is why we have the 2-meter rule. Then there's aerosol transmission, which is, we think COVID is probably aerosolized as well, where particles float in the air longer, hours, sometimes days. And then there's fomite transmission. That's when you leave a little something on a surface, like a doorknob, someone else touches that doorknob, touches their face, and they get infected that way. Early on, we thought COVID might be a fomite-transmitted disease. And it probably is to a very small extent, but it really isn't noticeably. So we over-exaggerated the extent to which surface transmission is a thing, and we under-exaggerated how much it's an aerosolized disease. So we really should focus more on the fact that it floats around in the air and less on the fact that it may land on surfaces.
And I appreciate that the science has changed on these things, and so maybe a year ago, what we talked about is hygiene theater. It might be just simply because we didn't have the conclusive evidence that we have now. But I'll tell you another story, Doc, that I've had happen recently to me, is I went to a grocery store, and, of course, you're doing the distancing and you're waiting, and I go to put my groceries on the conveyor belt, and the cashier is like, well, hold on a second here, wait, because I need to spray down this conveyor belt. Now, the theory here would be that someone who was asymptomatic had been in the store and the lineup in front of me had bought some Fruit Loops perhaps, put those down, then that gets onto somehow on the conveyor belt and it goes around and then somehow gets onto my granola and I take it home and I get COVID. That doesn't seem to make any sense, Doc.
No, it's theoretically possible, but it assumes that there's a 100% probability of the asymptomatic person leaving if there's something behind, 100% probability of that thing lasting on the surface, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the way this works. The probabilities diminish with every level of transmission. So the chances of that actually happening are, in my opinion, vanishingly small and not worthy of conversation, really. But we go through this anyway. And in my household, I'm married to a family doctor. She insists that we clean our groceries still.
Really?
And I get it. Yeah,
still?
I'm being ultra careful, and I understand it. And I don't think it's needed. But I will say this: the common cold and the flu probably are well transmitted via fomites, right? And so you may not be protecting yourself against COVID, but you are protecting yourself against the common cold. There's a reason that the cold is so rare right now.
Right.
People are washing their hands. It's not just about keeping distance. They're washing their hands. So if the goal here is to control COVID, then we're not getting the biggest bang for our buck by focusing on deep cleaning. We should be focusing on the distancing, the mask wearing, and controlling air quality through ventilation. But if the goal is a longer, multi-year strategy for controlling respiratory diseases like the flu and the cold, then getting into the habit of cleaning surfaces is not a bad idea. But spraying down counters all the time between customers, that's a bit over the top.
That is fascinating. I love the fact that you're having within your household the same discussion that everyone else is, and it doesn't matter what your credentials are.
Oh, it's a constant source of stress here.
Dr. Raywat, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you again.
Thank you.